Hello, guys, and welcome to a very special spooky edition of the Film Angle. My name is Kris.
And I'm Alex.
And we teased last week we are going to do a very special episode where we talk about, well, it's the recurring theme of the films that streaming forgot, and this time it is a Halloween special.
Yes, I think this is our third edition of the films that streaming forgot of this year.
Feels like we've been doing it more, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Where we kind of scour the internet or the streaming sites to find a film forgotten, essentially. You know, maybe not many people have heard about it. We challenge each other to a different film and see if it's any good. And I think probably we set a precedent at the start that we chose bad films, wouldn't you say, Kris? We purposely chose films the other person probably wasn't going to enjoy, would you say?
I would definitely say that. I think it was more of a, how can I make Alex's life as miserable as possible?
And you did.
And I did, yeah. My many hours of research resulted in complete success.
You did twice, so thank you very much for that.
That's all right. That's all right.
I though, to be fair, I don't think I was much kinder. I don't think the films you watched were much better. But this time round, we are doing a spooky edition for Halloween. You know, it's October, people.
Mm-hmm.
Halloween's around the corner. So we decided we'd find a Halloween / horror film to kind of challenge each other with. But this time we said we'll be a little bit kinder to each other and actually try and find a film that maybe not many people have seen, but actually sounds quite promising and could be good.
Yeah, spoiler, you were a lot kinder to me this time. I did this very last minute last night. I only just finished the film, and I came home from work, and I was like, I had to pick up my girlfriend Lauren in the evening. I was like, right, I've got this 2-hour window to watch this. I don't feel like watching a movie right now, and if it's a bad one, like, it's going to be really painful. I stuck it on, and you know what? 5 minutes in, I was really, really enjoying it, and it was 90 minutes that flew by, and you did good, buddy. You did good. I didn't hate it. It's the first films that streaming forgot that didn't feel like homework.
Oh, brilliant, man. Brilliant. I also didn't hate mine, so that's good. I mean, we'll get into it, but I'm not sure how much I really, really enjoyed it or anything like that, but I didn't hate it, which is the main thing. It wasn't painful to watch, and I don't think I checked the time once. Which
is
Atlantis,
like a very you thing. I think I hear that every time you don't give a movie like a 3 out of 5, Alex, you'll say, like, I've checked my phone 10. You're terrible for that.
Yeah, I mean, like, especially with Atlantis Untold, I think I was checking every 2 minutes, and I was like, oh my god, only 2 minutes have gone past.
I mean, that one might have been a bit more understandable.
But yeah, with this one, I was pretty enthralled from the beginning. So yeah, it's worth, if you didn't listen to the last episode or you forgot which films we challenged each other, I challenged film. I challenged Kris.
Challenged film.
I challenged film. I challenged Kris to watch Wake Wood, an Irish / British horror film.
It's a Hammer horror film. Yeah, I think it's produced.
Oh, was
by
it Hammer?
Yeah.
Nice. And then Kris, you challenged me to watch Images, which is a 1972 British psychological horror film directed by Robert Altman, who did The Long Goodbye.
And Popeye.
How could one forget? So those are the films we watched. Those are the films we were challenged to watch. And yeah, I think we both watched them last night. So pretty fresh into this. Kris, do you want to go first and let us know about Wake Wood?
Between this world and the next, from that twilight realm you see o'er your perch, the trials of the living and the wake of the dead. Do we have an agreement?
We just want to see her again.
Yeah, I actually really recognized the poster once I looked the film up. I've never heard of it, but I recognize the poster from whenever, I think it was when video shops were like starting to close down. Like, you guys had Blockbuster over here in UK, right? And in England.
Yeah, I guess so. I actually wasn't in the UK for a lot of my childhood, so
What?
yeah. So we had the Naffy in Germany where you could rent films. Though it was just a general British
Unfortunately.
supermarket, and you could get all your British products there. And then also there was a small section of rental DVDs.
Oh right, okay. That sounds like a big services station almost.
I mean, it was a chain. It was a chain. But it's where I first rented the Star Wars VHS tapes. So.
My very first Star Wars videotape was from a car boot.
Oh, nice, nice. I like that. How much?
I was a little boy. My mom and dad were, shout out to mom and dad here, notorious for not ever giving me anything that I wanted. Um,
Bloody hell.
and not even at a car boot sale did they want to spend £1 for the Phantom Menace. Obviously, like, a masterpiece at the time. So I think I remember I cried my eyes out, and they actually literally had to like escort me out. And the woman who was running the stall saw that I was crying, and she gave me the video for free.
Oh wow, wow. I
Yeah,
feel like you blackmailed her.
yeah. Well, no, she ran after me, so it was a nice act of sympathy and humanity there. Um, anyway, I remember seeing the poster of Wakewood in our version of Blockbuster in Ireland was Extravision, which was basically exactly the same. And I remember seeing the poster for this here, like, the big hand that sort of resembles a tree root sticking out of the ground. And so, yeah, it was kind of really cool to actually finally explore this movie. It centers around, it's set in 2009, and it's set in Donegal. I have to say, we both said that it was set in Northern Ireland. It's technically Republic of Ireland. Um, it was directed by David Keating and stars Timothy Spall and Aidan Gillen. So that those are two really big names that we know now, especially from Aidan Gillen from Game of Thrones and Timothy Spall. Everybody just knows him from everything. So it centers on a couple and their daughter. I think she's around 10 years old, and it starts off that it's a really lovely family platonic relationship that all three of them have, and the little girl's going off to school, and on her way off to school by herself, she gets mauled by a savage dog. And it doesn't even cut away. I mean, it's pretty savage. You see her getting ripped to shreds. It's awful. It is pretty horrible. And it's not goofy. It plays it really tone serious. um, we go a year later, and the mother and father are still recovering. They haven't really ever filled the void from their daughter dying. So they move to this town called Wakewood to kind of get away from it all, and they discover there that there's a cult that is operated by the charismatic sort of church leader in the town, Timothy Spall. There's a cult there that resurrects dead people from the ground. Um, Under the proviso, though, that they've had to be dead within a year, or else the whole thing messes up, and they can only have the recovered person for 3 days, and then after those 3 days, they have to return them back to the earth again. So it's a pretty double-edged sword, and a lot of people in town do it. The mother and father, they engage in this. They're like, yes, we completely want to do this, but they lie. They lied to Timothy Spall. They say that she died within the year, but she actually died over a year ago, which completely breaks the rules.
Oh.
So whenever the daughter comes back to them, it's all nice and sweet. It's all nice and sweet until they start to notice something's not quite right about her. And then a lot of, fun stuff happens in it. And it's a really good original concept. I mean, I think we've all done the resurrect from the dead, the loved ones things being done in The Simpsons, even, or, we get a lot of it in film, but
felt very Pet Cemetery for a minute until they added that kind of extra
yes,
edge to it.
exactly. And they've added a lot of rules. It's very gory, but it's also very it's so serious, and it's so focused in on the grief of the loss of a child that actually you kind of get emotionally invested in this thing. And it's worth saying that it is definitely done on a shoestring. It's almost like a glorified student film, and it's almost amazing that they got these actors to be in here, and they do phone in. Like Timothy Spall throws in a really good performance. So it is done on the budget, but there's still great techniques to really get around the budgetary constraints. It's almost like the film Dog Soldiers, where a lot of it is really tactile and
Yeah.
done on a budget, and really uses the power of editing and camera cuts to really kind of sell the horror elements. And yeah, no, I it was a really solid, actually, looking movie. I was really surprised by this.
So, in terms of like a scary film, does it provide enough scares?
It actually does. It throws in a few jump scares.
Mm.
For technique, doesn't really work here. I think that's the movie's age. I think it was very, like, a few techniques of Frozen there are very much products of the mid late 2000s, where it's trying to kind of cash in on that a little bit. But where the movie really succeeds is in its body horror. There's people being born out of other people's bodies. There's a really good technique. And sorry, one of the other rules that I forgot to mention about raising a deceased person is that they are not allowed to leave the town of Wakewood within that 3-day period. So they do plan to steal the daughter and take her away from Wakewood and see if they can cheat the system. As soon as they leave the boundaries of the town, the daughter starts to redevelop the wounds and the blood, like,
Ooh.
of when she was attacked by a dog, and you see her die again, basically, and she's screaming, and you just seeing her neck ooze of blood, and then she's dead. They bring her back into the boundaries of the town, and she resurrects again, and all the cuts and everything, they all disappear. And it's so clever having these 2 or 3 rules that it sticks by, but it really adds a lot of danger, a lot of element to, and a lot of grief to the story. I was pretty impressed by it. But yeah, it is a horror movie. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it was probably the grief element that kind of drew me to it, and I feel like a lot of horror films do play on that. But I just love that kind of premise of like the 3 days of resurrection with a loved one that you've lost,
I
and
know,
how
and you're
you
like,
kind of come to terms of that. And I guess, I mean, what is I mean, I don't know if you want to spoil the whole film or anything like that, but like the climax, is it them trying to cheat the system and the town going against them, or is
well, that
like
that
whose
is
side are
the
you on? Do
that's
you
the
want them to
initial
keep it?
conflict.
Keep
That is
her?
the initial conflict. But the story really takes a turn is whenever the young girl starts. There's something not right with her. She's not the same girl that they had, when before she died. No, the first day she's pretty normal, and they have a lovely, perfect first day. But then she starts, she starts killing animals. Um, they find a dog. They accidentally run over a dog, on the second day of having her back, and they take the dog in, and they treat it as their own, and they rename it, and they give her the dog. And
Seems an odd present considering her.
considering her downfall, yeah, it's a weird, yeah, that doesn't really work in terms of their headspace, I feel. But it's interesting because she then vocalizes that, when it's good to mention that her dad, played by Aidan Gillen, is a vet. And
Uh,
yes, and the whole thing is that Timothy Spall is given this gift of bringing the daughter back, as long as Aidan Gillen sticks to a rule that he has to, for the rest of his life, stay in Wakewood and tend to all the animals that are injured and everything, and and he can't say no. And
oh,
and this dog that they find on the street is one of those two. So him and his daughter are actually, he shows her how to sew the dog back up again. Um, and she kind of lets out this really, really creepy line saying, humans aren't supposed to hurt animals, are they, Dad? And he's like, no, but animals aren't supposed to hurt humans either, are they? So, referring to, obviously, to her own death, which she isn't supposed to be aware of.
oh,
So it's interesting. And then the next day, the dad goes outside and sees the entire skin of the dog is thrown up against the outside kitchen door. And he picks it up, and also with the skin body pretty close by to it. And it's
ooh,
pretty apparent that the young girl did it.
ooh,
And
dear.
lots of things like this start to happen. People start, yeah, she goes on a pretty much a murder spree by the end of the movie. It really kind of goes all full ham, but it's really creepy. and it earns it and builds it up. But it's a good movie. The climax of it goes absolutely crazy, but it's really satisfying.
Oh man, you actually make me really want to see this. I might add it to my list for the horror October I've been doing.
Like I do want to say before you watch it, it isn't a masterpiece. I mean, it is on a budget. You gotta like really suspend a little bit of disbelief because of its constraints, but it's doing something original, and with its resources, it does really well, and that's what the best horror movies do sometimes. So I actually, you got to give credit where credit's due, and I appreciated watching something that felt original, even though it was 13 years ago. So you can't always say that.
Exactly. So I feel like there's a lot of directors, or just like in general, horror seems to be quite cheap to make, and a lot of the time makes its money back in the box office. Some of the cheaper studio ones and stuff like that. But I just feel like there's so many good, interesting horror films, and directors are usually given a little bit more space to play around with them and really go crazy with them. Who directed this one?
It was directed by David Keating. No, and I feel he did a follow-up horror film in 2012, and I forget the name of it. And I think it was a very similar budget as well. But I think after that, he hasn't directed anything else. I think he's a bit of a strange career, actually, in that way. Do you know how much it earned in the box office? Do you want to know?
Go on.
It earned a total of 1,251 British pounds.
Okay, so yeah, definitely a film that streaming forgot.
Definitely fits the parameters of what the show's trying to do.
Oh man, I maybe just not released at the right time.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good like midnight movie. Like you're by yourself and you're like, I want to watch something a bit kind of like unsettling and a bit weird, and it's got that eerie tone to it. So yeah, stick it on any night that you're really bored this Halloween.
Nice. So I think I know your answer, but is it a film that streaming should forget, or is it one more people should know about?
For the first time on this on this segment of the films that streaming forgot, it should not be forgotten. So please check it out.
Wow, first time, nice.
Has tough competition against the last two, I know, but
yeah. So I guess that ranks at the top
of all three.
My ghost dog not in there.
Definitely not. But we'll pad out this segment as time goes on. We'll add more and more to the roster, and it will be fun to compare down the line, won't it?
Who shot off the goddamn gun?
I don't know.
Who shot off the goddamn shotgun in the goddamn house? It wasn't loaded, that's for sure. Who loaded it?
Well, I didn't load it.
You want me dead? Make me dead.
You're dead. Now just stay dead.
Do I scare you? I am a ghost.
Alex, can you tell me about the film that I recommended to you? Because it's interesting that I came out of a movie more positive than you, even though my film was less well regarded than yours.
It's true. I mean, we do have a slightly, definitely more well-known director here with Robert Altman, but a film of his that I hadn't heard of, and according to the amount of people we've seen reviewing it on IMDb and Letterboxd and stuff like that, not a massively popular film in terms of numbers either. But yeah, it's a very interesting 1970s horror film, very, very psychological. Let me go into it a bit. It's very difficult to kind of describe the plot because it's a very trippy film. With so basically it's we're following a children's author called Catherine, and she's basically, I guess you're supposed to believe that she's having some kind of mental breakdown, or something's playing a trick with her, but she's having all these kind of like hallucinations of like previous lovers and a doppelganger and all these things, like sometimes like like she'll think she's speaking to one person, and she isn't. She's speaking to her husband. So that there's all these kind of crazy stuff going on while she's staying at this remote vacation house of hers.
Right.
And it's trippy and it's weird. So the film was released in 1972, and it's very 70s.
Yeah.
So Catherine, she's played by Susanna York, who has the most kind of like 70s, like she just oozes
Is
70s.
it
She's got the 70s
the
hairstyle.
curtain bangs, is it?
It's like the bangs and the bob, and it's all kind of like it's all coming together.
Can I just say though, like I find the 70s, I don't know about you, I say this, I bring this up to Lauren probably once a month. The 70s creep the shit out of me. I do not know why. Is it the beige walls, the interior design, the furniture, the clothes? It creeps the fuck out of me. And once you turn that into a horror movie, I'm like putty in its hat.
See, the thing is, the 70s setting, the initial opening scene is set in a very 70s house. I guess you're supposed to assume it's London or something.
Everything's
and
pine.
Well, it's kind of everything. So they're quite a wealthy couple, I would say.
Right.
Everything's kind of glossy and big, but it does ooze that 70s style. It's not as, I guess it is funky, but it's more of like a black and white funky than anything else. Not as much color. But then obviously when you get to the like the holiday home, that's very more just like a cottage. Well, it never says where it is, but it was filmed in Ireland. So
there's a thing this week.
There you go. So we both said Northern Ireland last week, but both films are actually filmed in Ireland.
I know. Well, there's no movies are made in Northern Ireland.
Was Frank made in Northern Ireland, or did they go to Wales?
Probably the south. Probably the south. All we ever get is Kenneth Branagh on a couple of scenes in a Star Wars film. That's Northern Ireland.
Hey! Game of Thrones, man.
That's over with.
No, you got House of the Dragon now. It's great.
Are they filming there? Are they?
Oh, saying that, a lot of it takes place in King's Landing this time, so it's. I
haven't caught up on that show yet.
They must be. They must be filming some of it. I must say, I'm really enjoying it though.
I've heard good things.
You've never wanted an uncle to hook up with his niece more than this show.
That's like the invert of Game of Thrones. What Game of Thrones did with incest. So that's kind of interesting.
This time you want the incest.
Right, okay.
Weird. No, great show. Anyway, we've come off. Anyway, filmed in Ireland, and this country home, stunning. The surroundings are beautiful. There's waterfalls, there's ponies and sheep. There's, I don't know if you call them mountains, but big hills.
You're just describing the countryside.
Exactly. I mean, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It looks really, really nice. It looks really, really nice. And that's where it kind of goes a bit weird, because we drive up there. The couple drive up there, and then the husband wants to go off and shoot something, and then he's like, "You go down to the cottage and warm it up." And she stands at the top of this mountain hill, looking to the cottage, and sees herself arriving in the car and getting into the cottage. Then I thought, oh, this is going to be a doppelganger story. But no, you then change to the point of view of the person who's just walked into the cottage, and then you follow that Catherine.
Wow, that's really disorientating. Yeah,
it's a very disorientating film. The 70s were very much, I think, like you could start zooming on cameras, and that was very much a big thing. They love zooming in this film. They love it. Zooming on everything. And it's also worth saying, so it's got a really interesting sound mix, like lots of different noises. The soundtrack, it was composed by John Williams, and it is unlike any John Williams score you've heard before. It's just like this mishmash of really uncomfortable sounds, like screeching and clanging, and there's a particular motif of chimes throughout the whole thing going on.
I mean, that's true. The early John Williams is like very different to the John Williams we know today. I think, if you think about even the early Spielberg movies, like I know Jaws is very iconic, but definitely does have a different flavor to like your Star Wars and your Indiana Jones or anything like that. And you forget that he was very experimental sort of composer of his time.
Yeah, as much as his most popular tunes are the most catchy
Yeah.
music of all time, they have a similar sound to them. I remember I was trying to hum the Star Wars sound the other day, and I ended up morphing into Harry Potter, and and then you kind of morph in,
Yeah.
and then you kind of morph into Pirates of the Caribbean, and you morph into Jurassic Park, and you're just morphing all over the place. Like, I can't get the motif, but it's the same kind of very similar
You end up
melody.
just doing the Rogue One motif. Nobody does that.
Oh yeah, well that wasn't John Williams.
I know, that's why.
Leave him out of it, man. Anyway, where was I going with this?
You're explaining about how you followed her and how you followed her into the house.
Yeah, and then when you're in the house, and by this time she's already had strange phone calls telling her husband's cheating on her. She kisses her husband at one point, and he changes that. Like all of a sudden, she has this piercing scream, and the husband's face has changed into another man's face.
Wow!
But then it changes back, and then when you're in the house, the husband brings over well, actually, there's a French guy who pops up who she thinks might be a ghost, might not be a ghost.
French ghost.
Yeah, French ghost, who is somebody that she must have had an affair with at some point.
Right.
Who died in a plane crash.
Are all these things that are like reoccurring, all these images, for lack of a better term, are they things that we've seen already at the beginning of the film? Like, or these are things that are preoccupying her mind, or, and is there truth behind them, or is this just, new stuff that she's just kind of overthinking and it's kind of hallucinatory and, something like that?
Yeah, it's very hallucinatory for the most part. There's definitely, obviously, some elements of it are real, but then it's her trying to pitch together what is real and what isn't, and what has happened and what has.
So you're really in the POV of her, and you feel like her when you watch it.
Yes. You're very much as disorientated, and that's where you're very disorientated from the very start, and I think that's where maybe some of my my criticism comes into the film, because I just you're trying to figure out what's this all about and what's it all amount to, and there's a pretty good twist at the end of the film, but why is this happening is never really kind of fully explained. But I guess you're left to, it's very left very ambiguous, and for me it's very much like the way I read it was this woman's having a mental breakdown. She's in a marriage that might be, second best. She wants kids, can't have them. She might have had a child with another man who comes into the house at some point. He brings his daughter, and it's very much implied that potentially that daughter might be hers from an affair, but it's never really answers that. It's worth saying as well that the guy who comes in is played by an actor called Hugh Malay. I don't know if that's how I probably butchered his last name, but he plays a character called Marcel, and he's the biggest creep. And I kept thinking, where have I seen his face? And he hasn't actually done that much. I think he's done a few pieces with Robert Altman, and I haven't seen any of his other films. I was like, his face looks familiar. And I was doing some research today on the film just to I like to get other people's opinions on it. I don't know if you feel the same way about this, but after you watch a film, especially a film where you're left like, did I like that? Did I not? Sometimes when you listen to people talk about it, if you hear people talking about it positively and you agree, it kind of makes you go, I think this was a good film. But if you hear people speaking negatively and you agree, it goes the other way. However, if you hear people speaking negatively and you disagree, which is what I did with one of the podcasts I was listening to today. I can't remember the name of it, but the guy wasn't very keen on the film, and I was disagreeing with him a lot. And I was like, no, you don't get it. But he pointed out the reason that Marcel looks so familiar in this He looks like Ted Bundy. The guy looks like Ted Bundy, and it's weird, and he's really creepy, really
Right,
like
okay.
always coming on to her, basically like trying to rape her at points. It's like
And is he real or a
yeah,
construct?
he's real, and she tries to murder him at one point, and that isn't real. So you see, there's a lot of this stuff going on where
Yeah.
she's like, "I'm going to get rid of him once and for all," but then that doesn't end up being real. So for the most part, he is real, and he definitely is creepy. Hugh, who's the French guy who pops up,
Yeah.
he isn't real. He is dead. But I think it was her kind of, past lovers, a potentially loveless marriage, no children, and kind of all of this kind of coming out to play, and she's having this kind of episode. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Blonde, in the
Right.
way that Marilyn Monroe's having this kind of mental breakdown because she can't have kids in that film. But it
So, I
was
mean,
done a little bit better.
it's funny though, like Blonde does that thing to you where you're like, I do not want to watch another movie about mental health for about the next year. So, the fact that you still came out, relatively middle of the road is a testament.
I think that's just the way I read it, but I've seen other people read it. So because Catherine is a children's author, and like I was saying, Susanna York, who plays her, actually wrote the children's book that she narrates throughout
Oh,
the
right,
film.
okay.
I say children; it must be like young adults, because like my partner, who's a teacher, was just like, that's not a kid's book. When she's narrating it, she's like, kids don't know.
No eggs or crocodiles or anything.
Unless in the 70s, kids were just a lot smarter. I don't know. But I saw some places were writing about the film and how it might have been a film about the creative process and Robert Altman's own kind of creative process of like, creating characters, killing them off where they don't work and stuff like
All
that,
right,
and
okay.
like trying to figure out a story in this time. So I guess you can, all these kind of visions you could read into it how you want. And I love a bit of ambiguity, but that's also where some like my criticism of the film, where I was kind of left at the end of it going like, okay, sure. And it looks stunning. It sounds stunning. But
From what
yeah,
I've seen, it seems to be like a film that's more kind of beloved, and it showcases a lot of the 70s flair, in terms of its new toys and in terms of and a director sort of flexing those new sort of found skills and attitudes. Is it a bit more of that than the actual story?
yeah, I would say there's a lot of camera work, a lot of camera trickery,
Yeah.
lots of kind of mirrors and stuff like that. So yeah, Robert Altman's getting very creative with the way he films it,
I
and
can feel like I see the movie in my mind already. You just started
yeah,
talking about it.
as much as I like in with this, our modern kind of horror films, I don't know if I would classify this as a horror so much anymore. Maybe more
Right.
of like a psychological thriller.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really scary per se, but I am looking at it with modern eyes. Like the scariest moments are when like Susanna York lets out this piercing scream, and you have to turn the TV down really because the
Your dog
scream
starts
is so
running
much
in
louder
circles.
than everything else. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those films where it's only been 24 hours now since I've seen it, but the more I think about it, the more I think I did like it. It's
Jeez.
definitely not a bad film. It was just whether I loved it. No, I don't think I did, but I definitely did. I definitely did enjoy it, and it's worth checking out. It's one of those kind of
Hmm.
unique pieces of like 70s cinema where it's just interesting to see somebody kind of get creative with the film process, especially because like it's kind of from 70s onwards that people really did start to experiment a bit more. I would say anything like pre 70s is a little bit more. I guess it depends on the
Hmm.
country. The French were probably being a lot weirder before the kind of Hollywood studio system.
That's true. That's true.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a very interesting piece of film, and
Is it
it was actually nominated for Best Original Score at the Academy Awards for John Williams.
Oh
So there
wow!
you go.
For a film that hasn't even amounted about 3,000 reviews on IMDb, that's pretty significant. It's kind of funny how that one's kind of slipped through the net. But is it a movie like for people listening to the show? Is it one that's kind of recommendable for the average audience, or is it more something you could recommend to the film lover who likes to, get an idea of 70s horror film and how the timeline of that? Or do you think it can register to everybody?
I think it would have to go towards the film lover. I think if you were
Yeah.
to release this with an A24 logo,
Oh, right.
people would know the
Yeah.
kind of ride they'd be in for. If it was
Yeah.
distributed by A24, you know what you're getting. It's a
Starring
little bit
Florence
more
Pugh.
arty, a little bit more experimental, and kind of plays with the format a lot. So yeah, I mean, it's not a film that streaming should forget, I don't think, and I think more people should watch this. But yeah, general audiences maybe not, but if you're a fan of film, definitely worth checking out. It's very unique, very interesting, and didn't bore me at all.
No, actually, I'll definitely catch up on this because it was an easy find for me last week because this film was in my watch list anyway, and I saw that it was on Prime, and I knew it wasn't super well known outside of the really, nerdy film community, so I thought it was worth checking out. But no, glad you enjoyed it anyway. I think it's a positive for both of us this week. I don't know if we can say that for the future of this segment. I think Laura, my partner, says, well, why are you guys doing good movies this time? That's not the point of the segment. And I was like, it's been a hard couple of weeks. We need this. We need this.
It didn't
So-
feel like homework this time, whereas the other ones really did feel like homework. I mean, I'm sure we'll go back to maybe some more schlocky stuff in the future, but I think it was interesting to find a film that actually sounded promising.
Yeah.
And I think we kind of did that this week. I think Wakewood, I think I might check out, and it sounds like you're definitely going to check out Images at some point.
Yeah. So we both benefit there. Yeah, and I would recommend Wakewood to people who are just like, generally watching horror movies at home. I think if you can get past the fact that it's on the cheap, really just kind of break that fourth wall, guys. It's movie. Some people don't have the budget sometimes, and that's okay. But if you can get past that, I think you'll really enjoy a really kind of thought-provoking, fun horror movie. So I think anyone can enjoy it.
Next week, guys, we are going to be doing a top 5 Halloween films.
Yeah, we were originally going to do horror films, but like I was saying to you, then you miss out things like, not saying that this is on my list or anything, but you miss films like, the sort of Aardman films, like where, Curse of the Were-Rabbit or Nightmare Before Christmas and things like that, because they're technically not horror movies. So I thought we opened the parameters a little bit and stick to Halloween movies, and I think it'll be a lot of fun to see what you come up with.
Yeah, how are you going into it? Because for me, like I like horror films and I like Halloween films, but I don't know how many I've got that are like 5-star masterpieces or anything like that. Like I don't even know if I'm going in with this with our, should I be looking at this almost as if I'm curating 5 films for a Halloween film festival over a weekend? That's how I might go into it. Like, what would I show to people to get them really excited about Halloween and really get into the spirit? I think that's maybe how I'll head into the list.
And does it necessarily? It doesn't have to. The film doesn't have to revolve around the holiday of Halloween, right? It can just be a horror movie. It doesn't matter where it is set and where it is. Would you agree with that, or do you feel like it has to be centered around the holiday?
Oh no, I think it's anything that gets you into the spooky spirit.
I'm not gonna, again, this isn't on my list, or it might be. I'm thinking about something like John Carpenter's The Thing. Definitely not a Halloween based movie. It's very snowy, but I watch it at Halloween.
Yeah. Or like even Images wasn't like a straight up what you'd expect a Halloween film to be, but it gets you into that eerie, spooky season, and being set in the countryside, you get all that kind of autumnal vibes that people love.
Those Animal Crossing vibes.
Yeah, like you're sipping a good old pumpkin spice latte.
Oh, and you're slank it with some marshmallows.
Oof.
I like to be that guy right now.
I want to be next to that.
So yeah, the goalposts are pretty wide for this one, so it's going to be really fun to see how you think and how I think and how those sort of differ, and see if we even come up. Be interesting if a similar answer even comes up, because last time we did top 5 comfort movies, I could have included anything. You included anything from The Parent Trap to Portrait of a Lady on Fire, so that really didn't have any boundaries.
Yeah, I feel like our list will probably go somewhere similar this time. Completely different.
I think there'll be one. There'll be at least one.
Do you reckon? I reckon yours are going to be all very comforting Halloween films, and mine are going to be Alex, we need to check in on you again and make sure you're okay.
Should I put in Blonde on our list?
Oh no, that definitely didn't get me into the Halloween mood at all.
But yeah, no, that's definitely something I'm really looking forward to doing. I think we don't do enough lists on this show, so it'll be really good to start getting into the rhythm of doing something like this, especially around Halloween, which is one of my favorite months of the year to watch films, because sometimes I realize that horror movies and Halloween sort of movies are kind of some of my favorites. Like they really are things that rejuvenate and get me excited about film again. When I come out something feeling scared or really kind of moved by something I see kind of freakish on screen, it rejuvenates me again. So I'm really excited to talk about this list.
It's kind of one of those things like we were saying earlier, because you have a low budget, unless it's kind of studio interference because of the low budget nature of the films, people really go all out with it sometimes, and there's hits and there's misses. But my favorite thing about Halloween films and watching films around this time of year is that they're usually 90 minutes. And that is a perfect time for me in my old age.
That is true. That is true. Alex does not like... You know what? I'm starting to get to that point too. I used to be like, when I was like 18 and I was starting to really get into film, I was like, when films are 3 hours long in the cinema, like that's what I love. I love to be in the cinema as long as possible. It could be excess. I don't care. Just give me more and more and more. Now I'm like, if it doesn't get in and get out and within 2 hours, it's doing something wrong. Unless it's The Godfather.
Yeah, it really, like, these days, the time, films really need to warrant the time. And with a good film, you don't notice the time, but when it's a bad film,
yes, that's the thing.
Blonde, and you're 3 hours long, Blonde, it's a struggle.
You're not really watching Blonde. You're sort of watching Blonde and you're watching YouTube or TikTok at the same time, right? So that's how you experience Blonde.
Oh, man.
Anyway, we weren't going to talk about Blonde, but we feel like I've talked a lot about Blonde even in this episode.
It's true. All right, well, we'll wrap it up there, guys. You should follow us on our Instagram. You should follow us on Spotify and Apple, and rate us where you can. Share us with your friends, share us with your family, and let everybody know. It's our list next week, guys. It's the top 5 Halloween films. I think that's pretty exciting. Come find out what we talk about next week. I'm Alex.
And I'm Kris.
And this has been The Film Angle.
Bye, guys.
Goodbye. That was my horror exit to the...
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. I thought it was your, like, hello. Hey.
Goodbye.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Is that your bird call? See you later.
See ya.